Welcome to BuildWise, the podcast where construction meets wisdom. Join us as we explore the ins and out of the construction industry. We're going to share insightful tips, dive into the latest trends. Whether you're a professional or just getting started in your journey in construction, BuildWise is your go-to source for valuable insights. Let's build a smarter, wiser future together. Like and subscribe now. Stay tuned for a foundation of knowledge in every episode. All right. So, Bree, what are we going to talk about today?
Oh, I have some plans for you today.
You do?
I sure do. So speaking about plans, I want to talk about plans. Building plans, construction plans, job site plans. What are plans? What is the basics? What are the basics?
Well, if they're done right, they are, they're going to give you the layout of everything that you need to do on the job. And they're supposed to be pretty well thought out. And some are and some aren't. So, you got, your title page, you got like all these different pages, you'll have your architecturals, your civils, and your mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural, and things like that.
Are they legally binding?
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're actually considered construction documents, and they call them CDs for short, and they are legally binding documents, probably more so than any other form of paperwork on the job.
Okay. And who creates them? Is it you or is it an architect, engineer? Who
People
builds
can
them?
create their own depending on what they're doing. Different jurisdictions have different requirements. So a lot of commercial projects require an architect.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about residential? Different set of rules?
Residential, you can do a draftsman. It depends on your jurisdiction. Depending on the complexity of the project, they're going to require either an architect or an engineer sign off on it. I know City of Boise requires, an architectural or professional stamp on a lot of things. It just depends.
Okay. And so how important is it to read them correctly? Seems kind of like a dumb question, but let's break it down.
Yeah, and I'm surprised at how many people don't know how to read plans in this industry. And they will look at one page and not the rest. So looking at one page is like reading the Cliff Notes. You got to read the whole thing. And it's what I call following the rabbit trail. So you start off on, say, like an index page, which is right here. And then you can literally, see that each page, architectural, civil, landscape, structural, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And then, we got, you got all that stuff there. So let's just say you're looking up, something on the floor plan. You'll go to your first title page, you go to the floor plan page, flip to it, and then on there you're going to have different things to bring up and to look up. And then there'll be notes and details in those. I'll see if I can bring one of those up here.
Right, is it in the legend or that's on the front page, huh?
That's on the front page. But then you come up like this, so you got this right here.
Okay.
And so these are going to be your like grid lines or data lines that, you can say on, grid line 1A, I've got this problem in this corner, or, you can go, I'm on 8B, and then you can kind of discuss it that way. This particular one doesn't have a ton of information on it, but you can do like everything here. Like, so you got enumeration for like doors and stuff like that. So you should be able to look up whatever door number that is. It's a little small for me to read, and then you can go look up what type of door that is. It should tell you what kind of hardware is on it. Like, everything should be pretty self-explanatory, but it's a rabbit trail. So you start off on the one, you go to here. There's going to be this is considered a cross section right here.
Okay.
And that little arrow right there means, it's got a slice of the building through that, looking at it in the direction of that arrow. And so when somebody just looks at this, and they go, oh, yeah, I looked at the floor plan. yeah, did you look at the slice? Because there's probably more information on that, on the foundation and how it attaches, and then even in the, and when you get into that, and you get into even more and more detailed stuff, um, which like right here,
Mm-hmm.
you start getting into cross sections of things, and then it's very very specific,
Yeah.
and it doesn't even stop there though. But wait, there's more.
So, how did you learn how to read plans? Does it require schooling, or is this something that you just pick up as you are in the industry?
That's a good question. There's a little bit of learning what to look for, but mostly, I mean, you got to remember there's a bunch of contractors looking at this stuff, so it's not rocket science. But it does take being diligent in being thorough in what you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at and I just showed you an example of you start off on the title page, and then you go to the floor plan, and then let's just say you're doing framing on that floor plan, right?
Yeah.
Well, guys that just look at the framing and just start throwing up walls, well, if you don't take a look at that slice and then go to details like that one I just showed, and then start reading the notes and start framing it and fastening it like it says, and then even in there, it might have a note at the very bottom of one of those that says "see structural," and now you got to go to the structural.
Yeah.
And then it's the whole thing starts all over again. And until you do that whole rabbit trail, you do not know how that's supposed to be built.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's very, but I'm telling you, so far, I've been dumbfounded at how many people in this valley just go, oh, yeah, I read the foundation page. Yeah, what about the structural? Oh, I never look at the structural. And I'm like,
You're like, yeah, but you have to.
you're kidding me. And he goes, oh, no, I've been doing this for 25 years. I never read the structural drawings. And I'm like, and you're a concrete guy.
Mm-hmm.
It just blows my mind. And that puts not only the project, but it puts the contractor, the homeowner, I mean, whoever else, other subcontractor, it puts everybody in jeopardy when people don't do that. And it's not fair to the job.
Right. So when there are issues, how do you go about, what's the procedure to get them corrected? If somebody misreads the plans, which it sounds like it might happen a little bit more often than not, then, what's the procedure? What do you do as the general contractor?
So the best thing to do on stuff like that is to write an RFI. You got to know who all your people are on the project, all your players.
Mm-hmm.
And you write an RFI, which is request for information. And let's just say it has something to do with structural.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably going to write that. And it depends on how your project's set up. But if you have an architect in charge, typically you'll send it to the architect. The architect will distribute it to the proper entities for doing whatever you're asking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and it might tie to other things. So one structural item might affect an architectural element. And so that's why you send it to whoever the lead is, and then they put it together to all the entities, kind of take all the answers, put it together in one big answer, and give it back to you.
So if there is an issue, who's liable? Is it the subcontractor, or is it you as the general contractor?
Well, it depends. So the plans need to be correct, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's always this little note somewhere on the plans that says contractor to verify, right? To the best of your ability, you try to do that. So the minute you find out there's something wrong, and listening to your subs is a good way to do it. You'll get input throughout the project, but if you find out that there's something wrong, then you do an RFI and you try to get the question answered, hopefully long before you need it.
Okay.
So it doesn't hold up the project. And this is where plan reading is important. If the subcontractors are reading the plans specific to their trade in relation to other stuff, they're going to bring up great questions, and they're going to really help you be successful in asking the right questions. And it's going to be a very detailed and articulated question to the architects and engineers, because it's coming from a specific source. And then you as the GC tries to see how it applies to other things for, maybe a plumbing issue, something's too fat sticking out of the wall, whatever, how is that going to affect the stucco finish or the
Yeah.
finishes. And so, yeah, you got that kind of stuff going on, and you get your answer back. So if you do all those steps properly, then it just limits everybody's liability, and you move on with the project, and everything's great.
Right.
Sometimes an RFI will generate a COR, change order request, and other companies call them different things, but they will generate either a change order request, and then it'll either have a dollar value attached to it, no dollar value, or it'll have dollar value, schedule change, whatever, and that whole paperwork process from your original contract bid, plans, RFI, change order request, whether it affected the cost or the time. Sometimes it's a $0 change order, but it increases the time.
Yeah.
For instance, a good one for that would be, like some weather delays or something like that. It's just tracking contract extensions or contract changes, and that's a proper way to do it.
Okay. So if something does go wrong and something needs to be corrected, who do the, repercussions fall on? Is it the subcontractor? I know that kind of goes hand in hand with liability, but, if something actually does go wrong, who is responsible? Like who has to take on the burden?
Repeat that question though. Like what?
So are there any repercussions for the subcontractors, or is it the general contractor if there is indeed something that goes wrong?
Well, I mean, if something goes wrong in the plans?
No, like if somebody misreads the plans and then they go about their job.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. So I see what you're going at. Yeah, I mean, that's the argument of the day. The subcontractor goes, well, I didn't bid that. Well, it's in the plans. Yeah, but I didn't look at that page. I just had that happen.
Right.
It's like, I didn't look at that page. How do you not look at the structural? You're a concrete guy. Oh, I just look at the foundation page. That is the most irresponsible, silly thing I've ever heard in my life. And I'm dumbfounded at answers and responses like that. It's just so irresponsible. And it's, it causes delays on the project. Then you get into fights. And then their way of dealing with fights is they just pull out the magic bullet lien and put it on the job rather than accept responsibility for not paying attention to construction documents.
Right.
And, legally, if you really run this through the gamut, they'll find out how true it is that they should have read the structural drawings. But, it's a long, costly process. And it's like, if you just do the diligence up front and you pay attention, you're not only being a better contractor and a better subcontractor, but you're also protecting the client, your relationship with your general contractor, the client, and all the other subs. Because every time that happens, it delays. It's a chain reaction. It delays everybody. And so, and it's just unnecessary.
Yeah. Are schedules on the plans, or are those provided separately?
The schedules?
Yeah.
They're separate.
Okay.
But I mean, contractually, you got your contract drawings, your schedule. They all make up the contract, right? So, and then, there's a process for just about everything in construction. There's a proper protocol for everything in construction. And if you follow it, your project is safe, you're safer, your subs are safer, everybody's safer. If you're dealing with a bank, everybody's safer.
Yeah.
And when I say safe, not just, safety wise, but like you just don't have issues.
Right.
You conquer them with the proper paperwork and paper trail. And
Right.
if you do and you get done and there's a change to the drawings, let's say you have an issue down the road, you can chase the paper down to the exact thing that happened if you do it right.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you're all about document.
Yeah, and you can't, it's not, everybody can swing a hammer and everyone can be a contractor, but the guy that builds with the best paperwork wins.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So then, what do you do to ensure that plans are properly implemented? So do you have that would be like the project manager or the superintendent on the job, right? Just kind of monitoring and making sure everybody's on track, or is there another way to keep that implemented?
Well, there's a whole document control process. And so if it's done right, you're going to get construction documents all the way up to bid time, and they're going to change. So it's going to be, like you'll have your first round of, say, construction docs that you get originally, like bid sets. Then you're going to end up with revisions, and they should be tracked. They should have revision numbers, and they should be tracked. And a lot of there's a lot of architects that don't track revisions very well, and you got to be very careful when you get a new drawing to mark it or label it on when you received it, because you'll get 5 different revisions. It'll still have the same revision date on it, and so then it gets very confusing on what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. Yeah, so it's definitely there's a lot to it. So if you get those all the way up to bid time and you track them, and all of a sudden, you start the job and they go, oh yeah, this is on the plan, you should have caught it. Well, when did that plan come out? Oh, that was after we bid it. And the only
Yeah.
way you're going to know that is if you tracked everything up into bid time and everything that you received. And like, well, that's all revision 4. Well, no, there was 4 revision 4s, or whatever.
So when there are revisions, you've had me do this before, and it's been a long time, so I kind of forget. But you slide in another sheet into the plans, correct?
It's called slip sheeting. Yeah.
Slip sheeting. There you go. So when you slip sheet something in, is it marked differently? How can people identify that there's been a revision in the plans?
Well, there's a revision block, and there should have a. I wonder if there's one in here that I could show. They do. Should have a revisions right up here.
Okay.
Usually it's got lines, and it'll have a little triangle called a delta. It'll be delta 1, delta 2, delta 3, delta 4, blah blah blah.
So the
It'll
revision
say
will
a
have
revision.
that.
It'll
Okay.
say plan check corrections. It'll say job site revision or whatever. It'll be very generic. But then when you look for that little triangle on any of the stuff, you can look up and see what revision it is. But sometimes you'll have 4 different revisions, and you might only have 3 revision numbers up there, dates. And it's just somebody just forgot to mark that revision block. And so it becomes, you got to really pay attention to that. And
Yeah.
so I kind of forgot what the question was. So
Just talking about slip sheeting.
slip sheeting, yeah. So when you get a revision, the way I did it, and everybody does it different, right? So if you've got a good tracking and you got good stuff like that, but on the job site set or on that set here that that you've done for us is I'll take, say, a new A2 drawing and I'll put it in on top of the old drawing, and then I'll take that and I'll dog ear the old drawing so that I can look and see what the changes were. And if they're not clouded or revision marked, I'll personally cloud them or revision mark them.
Okay. Okay.
And then, so you basically, when you get done, you're going to have like an as-built set. You're going to have this big fluffy set of revisions, changes, and it's always less on a smaller job. It's usually a lot on a bigger job because there's just so much going on.
Do they ever divide the sections up, like on really big jobs? Do they ever separate the plans and divide it, or do they always keep them stacked together?
We split. So when I did those big plazas, I had a whole section on my big plan table for the civil drawings. And I had a section for the architecturals,
Okay.
section for the structurals. It just kind of depends on how. I mean, some of those sets are so massive you can't keep them together.
Yeah, that's kind of when you were talking about how some of the jobs are so big. I just was like,
Yeah. Yeah, on that one job in Temecula, I had like 32 permits up on the wall.
oh wow.
Yeah, it was just
Permits.
insane. All the stupid, we had different pads, different things. You got grading and all this other stuff. And that's another thing that your plans don't start and stop with this round set you get,
Mm-hmm.
It's combined with, when you're reading your structural drawings, it's combined with soils report information and recommendations from the soils engineer. And you got to know who to go to on all that stuff because, your structural drawings have a structural engineer, your soils has, a soils engineer. And sometimes the information will conflict on, say, footing size or depth.
Okay.
And, because soils report should be done before they do that design, but sometimes it doesn't always marry up, and you just got to make sure you double check it. So usually the most stringent one is the one you go with, but then sometimes you have to ask the question because it's might have some issues with who knows what whatever you're going to put it on or whatever.
Okay.
And then you got submittals. So all these things combined make up a really good project, and if you pay attention to all of them, it's really really it'll make the job come out right.
Okay. I want you to just go over RFIs a little bit more. That's request for information. So how do people go about writing them, and who do they submit them to? Is it to you, or is it to the architect, or where do they go?
Well, we touched on it a little bit. It depends on the subject, right?
Right.
So if it's a structural question, so like typically you got a lead architect that handles all that stuff, tracking of the submittals, the RFIs, all that stuff, and then you'll send it to one source, and then they divvy it up. And we did touch on that a little bit, but
Yeah.
but it just kind of depends. And then I've had other jobs where I would directly send it to the entity that needed to answer the question and copy everybody else. It depends on what they want you to do.
Okay.
Some get very strict about it. Some kind of cut that roundabout way of doing it and going directly to the source. I mean, it just kind of. I like going directly to the source and copying the rest.
Yeah.
And then everybody gets it back. But you could have, some of these bigger jobs, you could have 5 superintendents, and so sometimes they do that to keep it one channel and make sure things get divvied up properly to everybody. So people don't get a bunch of information they don't need yet, or can misinterpret it, or they want it to go through all the right channels, right?
Yeah.
So it'd go like to the architect, they divvy it up, collect all the answers, make sure it all met everything, send it back to the main superintendent, and then he would discuss it with his team, and you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
it just kind of depends. You get on a smaller job and it's a superintendent and architect, or a superintendent and engineer, or contractor engineer, and you're going like that, and then you copy the architect. I mean, it just, sometimes it just works easier that way and faster.
Okay.
So it just depends on how you want to set it up. And
Yeah.
then writing them, being articulate, knowing how to chase the rabbit trail. So, when you write an RFI, you got to build a picture in their mind on what you're trying to tell them. You can't just say, hey, man, I got a problem with the framing. It's not going together up in this northwest corner. It's like address the plan page. Hey, on A 2.0, detail 3, note 5, whatever it is, you can then articulate the issue.
Right.
And then if you can, you send up a backup sketch or picture of what you'd like to do. Like, this is what we're thinking that would work in the field. This isn't working for it. Can we proceed with this, or can you do another detail? And then you're basically got to build that picture in their mind, show them exactly where to find all that. Or if that detail, say, on the architectural drawings conflicts with detail 5.0 on S2,
Right.
then you tell them that. Say, look, these two details conflict. One shows a 6-inch wall, one shows a 3-inch wall. Which one do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And if we do a 6-inch wall, we got to widen the footing and da 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 da. I mean, you got to put a little thought into it. And the best RFIs are the ones that you ask the question, have an idea or recommendation, because you're out in the field. They're not. You're looking at it in 3D. They're looking at it in 2D. Well, sometimes now they look at it in 3D, but yeah, they got
All that
some good.
technology.
Yeah, I know. So, But yeah, so it can be, you got to know how to articulate it and chase that rabbit.
Do you feel like RFIs are used enough?
No.
So they should be used more.
Well, yeah, you don't want to inundate people either. I
Yeah.
mean, some
It's a
things,
fine line.
but I mean, if it's changing something in the construction drawings, you need to document it. And sometimes it's a confirming RFI. Sometimes it's just you write it. You've already talked to the architect. You already know the answer, but you just say, confirming RFI.
Document.
Just
Yeah.
confirming RFI on blah 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 blah. This is what we discussed. And then they come back confirmed, and you got the piece of paper.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay, so we have time for one more question, then some final thoughts.
All right.
How do you stay updated on the latest industry standards regarding reading plans? Because I'm sure they probably maybe change, or maybe they don't. But how do you stay updated?
How do I stay updated? I read plans every day, all day.
Does
40 some years of reading plans.
Does the industry change the way that you read plans, or is it typically the same? It's just maybe you used to read it on paper. Do you read it more on computers now? How's that?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So, I mean, I'd use a combination of both. I like the paper drawings, nice and big. You can flip back and forth. You can mark them all up. I've got, CAD programs and digital. Push that, will you? Turn that stupid thing off.
Another phone call. He's a busy man.
I put it on silent. I don't know why it's doing that. But anyways, and I've got CAD programs. I've got, PDF programs, and you can read them. You can mark them up. You can overlay them. It's kind of cool.
Okay.
You can take your architectural, take a cut of it, plop it on top of your structural, see if there's any misses. You can do that really. You used to have to call an architect and an engineer to do that stuff, but with the programs you got nowadays, Bluebeam and PlanGrid and all these other ones, Procore, and you can do these overlays really fast and easy, and you can actually see issues pretty fast. You can put your floor plan on top of your structural and say, oh, that footing's a little weird in that corner, it's not going to line up, what are we going to do? And that'll tip you off to some issues. But so you can read it all different ways.
Okay. All right. So final thoughts. What, if any, final thoughts on reading plans? And, are there any ways that we could be better at reading plans? And, just give us some last thoughts. That's it.
Yeah. The best way
Sum it up.
The best way to read plans is open them up and give it a shot. It's not hard. Just open the darn things up and read them. And one of the bigger problems, I guess, is, and I hear it a lot too, they read the plan, see the plan, talk about the plan, and then they execute their own game.
Their own plan.
Their own plan. And they go, oh, that's just how we do it here. And it's like, you don't get to change the plan unless you've got some paper that backs it up.
Yeah.
That's just irresponsible.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. I mean, think about it. You're the client. You spend, like on the bigger jobs, they can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars doing plans, right? And then some subcontractor goes, yeah, I just did it my way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you waste all that money and time if you just could trust their way? And the problem is, it's very short-sighted on a subcontractor to do that, because he has no idea of what went into the coordination of the other, say, MEPs or the architecturals, because they designed it that way. It might seem silly, stupid, the way they designed it, but it's done probably for a reason. Sometimes it is silly and stupid, and you got to, ask the question. Mm-hmm. But until you do that, you don't get to just change the plan.
Right.
So. Well,
that's kind of it for today.
There's a lot you can talk about on plans.
Yeah.
I mean, and we
Sounds
can
like it.
even, if you in this video podcast, if you guys want any more information on plan reading or any kind of other, if you got any questions, just feel free to ask them in the comments, and we will try to maybe have a session where we bring them up and kind of go through some of the questions and how to do certain things and how to find different things.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And, I feel like there's still, there's just so much information regarding plans. So it really is just a snippet. So again, just to, restate what he said, if you have any questions, put it in the comments and we can do later episodes with follow-up questions.
All right.
But yeah.
Hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you for watching.
Bye.